Do you want to get better at building in Minecraft to turn your builds from looking like this into something looking more like this? Well, here's some tips and tricks to help you get better at building in Minecraft. To begin with, you need to work out what kind of build you want to do. So you have a few different options. First of all, you can build into existing terrain. So you could build a base in a mountain, in a cave, or some existing terrain in your Minecraft world and turn that into your base. For example, expanding or building in a village. That is one option that you have, or you can build something from scratch. Now, if you're building something from scratch and you haven't really built a lot of the time, I'd recommend having an outline of your build. So for example, where this pink concrete is, this is going to be where like wildlife or trees are. The green is going to be some custom terrain. And then the house here, the yellow outline is the outside walls of the house, and the orange outline is more of the inside outline of the house for where the different room dividers are going to be. So for example, we could have this room as a bedroom, this room as some storage, and then this is like a smelting area and anything else in the base as well. And as you can see, this divides the rooms into different sections. So if this was actually built, this would be 4 separate rooms. And then the yellow outline would be the outside walls of where the house itself is going to be. And then obviously you have all the terrain and stuff around it. So you can either build something from scratch like this, or you can build existing terrain and convert that into your base. But I would recommend having the outlines and having a rough idea of what you want to build. You can always expand it later, but also sometimes you might go too large with projects, too small, whereas if you have the outlines and kind of the plan for what each room will be, it'll be a lot easier to stick to the right scale and not give yourself too large of a project too quickly. Next, you need to pick your block palette. So you have a couple of different options when it comes to block palettes. You can either go for a block palette that fits a lot of blocks really far like together, so a lot of really similar blocks, or you can have contrasting blocks that still look good together. So a block palette is basically just the blocks you are going to use, and you basically want to lay them out so you know what you're going to build out of. You can have as many blocks as you want with this, but you don't want blocks that are too different from each other to where it doesn't look good at all. So for example, a lot of stones will blend together well, a lot of wood blocks and stuff like that, but you might also want one block or 2 blocks that are slightly different. Like for example, having the roof out of a block that is slightly darker or a slightly different color so it stands out and adds contrast to your base. So plan out what blocks you want to use for your block palette. Here's a few different examples of different block palettes in this world, but you can have a lot of block palettes, and if you're struggling for ideas, you can use color theory, or you can even Google Minecraft block palettes, and there's websites out there that will give you good ones. One of the most basic ones is using like the wood, so the logs, the oak planks, cobblestone, and also stripped oak as well, but you can do any kind of block palette that you do want for your build, and depending on the theme of your build and the vibe you're going for, the atmosphere, you might want a completely different block palette, but you do need to pick what blocks you want to use, and I'd recommend laying them out in sort of like a line. So let's say I was going for this one, for example. I'd recommend just building the block palette somewhere so you know what blocks you are going to use. Obviously, you can add more to this if you do want to, but this is just for an example. So these are the blocks, for example, for this if I was building like an oak house or something. So obviously, the first kind of house you probably will build in Minecraft is just going to be a square house. It has a few windows here in this example. Yours might not. However, it does have a bit of an interior as well. It's pretty basic. It does have an armor stand and a painting and a bed, but this is really the most basic Minecraft house you can get if you're building from scratch. But you want to have something looking a little bit better than this. As you can see, this has no real depth, it has no real detail, no design or anything like that. So let me show you an example that has a little bit of design and a little bit of detail. So the first thing you'll notice here is the outside of this space has more walls. So it has an outer wall a little bit to add a little bit of depth. It also has some flowers, it has some trapdoors here to add more depth as well, and some grass. So this is the build from the front, as you can see right here, but if we go on the side, it also has some grass and some other bits as well to be able to make this stand out a little bit better. And what really makes this build better than the last one is the roof. So as you can see, this has a proper roof. It has like an upstairs as well in the base itself. So if we go into the space right here, then we can look around. So this has a couple of different walls dividing the different areas. As you can see, it has a bedroom right here with a lovely little carpet. It has some lights. It has a painting as well. And then this also has some storage right here. If we go through this room, this is the storage area of the space. We have a different floor as well to add some contrast and a cool color. We have a lovely staircase and then just some storage up here. So this is still really basic, but it does have a little bit more depth. It has a little bit more of like the flowers and all of the details and stuff, but whilst also keeping it really simple. Another tip for you is to make sure that you have pick block enabled. This does work in survival or creative mode. So if you go into settings, you can bind this to a keybind for your controller, for your phone, or whatever you play on. In this case, it's set to middle click of my mouse. So if I click on the emerald, for example, the middle click button of my mouse, as you can see, I get the emerald. I can then do the same for diamond and I'll get the diamond. Now in creative mode, it will just get the item for you out of the creative inventory or menu. If you're in survival mode, you'll have to have the item in your inventory to be able to pick block, but it's still really useful if you have a lot of different blocks in your inventory to be able to pick block and get to the block that you need really quickly. So make sure you bind this in your controller or your keyboard or whatever you play on settings to the button that you want it to be. It doesn't have to be middle click of your mouse. It can be any button you want, but you're missing out if you don't have this bound to anything. Now that's just the basic pick block, but you can also use this with data. So for example, this chest has a bunch of diamonds in. If I just normally pick block the chest, it won't have diamonds in. However, if you pick block the chest whilst holding down control, you'll get the chest with the data, and as you can see, this does have diamonds in right here, and I can place as many of these down as I want. You can also do this for signs as well, shulker boxes, or anything with data or information in to be able to copy the data and the information as well. It can be good if you're using command blocks for building terrain, for example my world editor tutorials or anything like that, as you can have the command stored into a shulker box or a chest, and then you can pick block it with the data and keep it in your inventory or in the chest so you can access the command blocks whenever you need to. Now, before we get into the final build, I want to say that I'm not a pro builder, so I'm sure some people can build way better than me, but hopefully this will teach you and help you get a little bit better at building at least, or learn some new skills. So as you can see right here, this is an area that I've built. Now, this is a base. It's got a different material because a lot of people do just build out of cobblestone or oak or the same block, so I thought, why not have a different material? What's really cool about this is the roof. It's got a custom roof to have bright blocks, so pink, magenta, and purple, as you can see. This is the roof right here. It's got details in it as well. Now, there's different blocks around here, so there's some different blocks to add some contrast. There's also fences as well, torches, stairs, slabs to be able to add a little bit of depth. Now, yes, this adds depth, and yes, there is different blocks here to add contrast and to also blend it in and just make it have more details. However, it doesn't go overboard. There's not blocks here for the sake of having blocks here, or fences here for the sake of having fences here. It still looks really good and doesn't go too far the other way. But what really makes this base look cool is all of the different stuff around it. So this is some wildlife. There's different flowers around here. There's cactus. There's sand, there's then flowers down here as well, and also a tree. You can obviously build a custom tree if you want. There's a campfire, and also some sort of plants here as well, like you'd find in a village, but a custom one built for this specific area. Now, this is just the external area of the build. Obviously, there's a little pond here as well, which looks beautiful too. And this is just a really quick example I made for the sake of this tutorial with the pots and everything. Obviously, you can put a lot more effort into it, but hopefully, it teaches you kind of the skills of the depth, the different sort of like blocks and stuff that you want to use in your worlds. So in here, we have obviously pets and a little bit of an interior. Through here, we have the walls all separated once again with a different block to be able to make it feel more like an actual house. Because if you go into a house in the real world, you obviously won't just have one massive room, most likely, if you're living like in an actual house and not like an apartment or flat or whatever that's like open plan. But yeah, if you go into like a room, there's going to be like kitchens, there's going to be like all different rooms. So imagine that in Minecraft, for example, this is like a little storage room in here. But then if we go out here, it feels like a completely different room because you walk through the walls and there's the pets again. Or you can go through here and see a little aquarium, or you can go through here and you can see the bedroom. And as you can see, there's little details in here as well. For example, we've got a shelf here with like amethyst, and then also with the different candles as well, and an item frame. So adding little shelves or little bits of furniture or detail that you build yourself, for example, the bookshelves, the paintings, or anything else, also add a lot to the decoration of your Minecraft builds, bases, or houses. And again, there is also an upstairs. So what's really cool about this is it has an upstairs, but it's sort of secretive because it's hidden with inside of sort of the top of your base, like an attic or loft or something. As you can see, it just has storage, but if this is a survival mode world, then you do have an awful lot of storage with this, which is really good. And it's also really hidden away and not just a massive room with a bunch of chests in for you. So again, this is just a really basic example, but hopefully it gives you some ideas or some tips or some steps of how you can get better. So add depth. You know, add stuff like fences, like walls, like stairs, slabs, and add different blocks as well to add contrast to your builds. And try and not just build out of the same block or just square, because as you can see, this is also a different shape build. It's not square. It's got different shapes. The roof kind of like slants down, so it starts up high and then goes down further and further. And then it's also not a square build itself. It's got little bits coming off in different directions, which is cool. And you also don't want to overuse glass in your Minecraft build. So I could add glass here, for example. There's not glass there because you don't want too much glass in your world, otherwise it will just literally be fully made out of glass, which will be kind of annoying. And one final tip for you is that if you want to stop something growing, so for example sugarcane, you don't want it to be too high, you can give yourself a structure void if you are in creative mode, and you can place a structure void on top. and then it will no longer grow. So as you can see, there's a structure void on top of that right there, and it will no longer grow up any further. If you haven't played Minecraft in a while, check out the playlist on screen to learn tips for returning Minecraft players.